I could pull something out of the bag. It'll be harmony, so it'll be a bit weird. It won't be the melody.
I guess we'll begin. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the third edition of the Eve Film Festival panel of Women in Film. My name is Maissa Houri, and I'm the events director for the film festival. I'm also a filmmaker and an actor, and I will be moderating today's panel. Thanks, Lisa. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that the land that we are situated on today is a traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. So for the panel today, I have a set of questions, and we're just going to end up having a conversation. I'll talk to the panelists, and then we'll just converse about the questions that I ask. So it's just very casual. Don't be shy to be very open and honest about your answers. We just need to, don't sugarcoat anything. Let it all out. So before, I'll begin by introducing our panelists. I have Nicole. Nicole, your last name, is it Viens or Viens?
It's Viens.
Oh, Viens, like in
Brennan.
Brennan. Okay. So I've been pronouncing it wrong like all these years. Viens. Okay. She's the head of accounting at Fireside Pictures. So a lot of the movies of the week that are being filmed here, she's the head of accounting. Is it the Hallmark movies or some, or like mostly the
Some
other?
of them are Hallmark movies. Yes. Most of them are Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all starting now, I think, right? It was November 1st where they all start
Countdown
show-
to Christmas.
Yeah.
Countdown to Christmas.
All right. We have Angie Seymour, who owns Angie's Models and Talents. Is it going by AMTI now?
AMTI, yes.
Okay. So your AMTI Army. I see that everywhere now. We have Penny McCaan, who's a filmmaker, and you used to be the director of Saw Downstairs, right?
Saw Video.
Saw Video, yeah. Okay. And we have Emily Ramsay, who is a producer and the director of the DG60 Film Festival. And we have Keltie Duncan, the programmer of the Ottawa International Animation Film Festival and director of film operations at the Canadian Film Institute. So we have some powerful women up here. Okay, so we will begin. My first question, so here we are, just a few short years after the Me Too and the Time's Up movement. Have you noticed a shift in the industry because of it? And if so, has it been positive, has it been negative, or has it been both? Whoever wants to start can go ahead.
It has been positive. I'm going to talk about an experience with a film here in Ottawa. My daughter was an actress, and the director offered her a ride home. And she said, I have a car. I could take myself home. He got her phone number from the list, her sign-in, and he sends her this text the next morning saying how it was humongous, how he couldn't sleep all night just thinking of her. And she goes, Mom, how do I handle this? So, I don't know, because he's in Ottawa, and he's the director. You say something, you're done. So she thought about it and spoke to my son, who's also in the business, and we did do a nice text saying we'd like, I like you, thank you for the compliment, but I just want to keep our relationship professional. And he accepted it. We went to the film festival, the Ottawa Film Festival, years ago. He was there, and he went up to my husband saying how his daughter turned him down. A total pig.
Wow.
Yeah, but she handled it right, and apparently the more I was talking to people, to other actresses, they had the same experience with this man. He's no longer in the business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for her, and for coming to you
Yeah.
to say, and even like you being in the industry for so long, you're like, how do we handle this?
How do you handle it? Because you're done.
Yeah.
If you're here, and he's like, so it was handled right, and it's just more women have to speak up and share that information.
Yeah, I work for two male producers, like the executive producer and the producer male, and they have a very strict, no tolerance policy about that kind of thing. And we had two actors on set, so the male actor was texting the female actor, and our producer actually had him kicked out of the union for a while because he's no tolerance. So I'm very fortunate to work with men like that. So our work environment's very, very safe, and a lot of our department heads are all women, so super respectful, and yeah.
And you've been in the industry for a while. So have you seen, is this newer for you to see that male producers are being, no tolerance to that?
Yeah, because I did work for a company probably like earlier in the 2000s where there was still a little bit of a boys' club situation happening, and I've found that that's not really the case anymore. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to touch on the shift?
Yeah, I'd love to. I feel like the shifts are being forced onto the industry, but it's very recent. Like it's in different capacities too. Yes, on sets are getting safer. There's a bit more of a space for women to go and report things and be taken a bit more seriously. But I can remember just 4 years ago, 4 years ago, where harassment was happening on set and it wasn't being taken seriously. And it's not something that you can just say, blanket statement, oh yeah, 100%, everything's better. There's still a lot of issues, right? So I think that we're seeing it in the media now. We're seeing big organizations like TIFF taking on Time's Up and Share Her Journey, that kind of stuff. That's facilitating more opportunities for women as leaders, creative leaders in the industry, from producers to directors, that kind of stuff. And that's definitely a great thing that's happening. But there's still, I think, issues with harassment on set that people still feel that they can't, just like in any workplace, that you don't necessarily have the ability to go up and speak to someone, or have like you're not experienced enough to know that you can speak to someone, and there's still no matter where you go, I think there's still issues with people feeling like you can take advantage of women and harass them on set, and it's slowly, I guess you could say it's slowly getting better, but it's because women are, I think, are making a big deal about it, and we should be, because it's too much. It's too much to continue to experience this, and it's in every space, right?
In a lot of productions in the U.S. And also SAG, they have a contract that they have every actor, every model sign that says zero tolerance, and it's all spelled out. So I think Canada needs to also do this. So this way, every actor that's on set, before going on set, signs it and realizes you can't wink at this girl, you can't ask her out for coffee afterwards, so.
But it's also, like you said, a director.
Yes.
Do they have contracts?
They
Directors,
have
producers,
signed
and
it
stuff?
as well.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, everybody signs it.
Because I think ACTRA had complaints, 90% or something. There's a lot of complaints. I think last year, the year before, that were untouched or unnoticed. The harassment complaints, ACTRA didn't address them. So is ACTRA getting better? Do you know?
I think they're creating policies to address these issues. I think ACTRA exists to support their actors, for sure, but I think it's just like any harassment in the workplace situation, that it goes through a long process, and sometimes it takes a long time to get to, but I don't know necessarily why that would be in particular. But this is across the board. It's not just for actors, between actors and producers, or actors and directors. There's issues too with the on-set personnel as well. The idea of having to deal with people. I was harassed by an AC, a first AC, whenever I was working on a film, and it wasn't sexual harassment, but he was verbally harassing me, and it got to the point where he threatened to quit the show because I wouldn't smile at him whenever he joked with me. Wow. And I'm just not that kind of person to accept stuff like that, but I was also told to be quiet and because we couldn't risk losing him. So it's things like that that was just 3 years ago. So that stuff like that happens, and is it taken seriously all the time? No, we hear a lot about it because I think actors have a bit more of a face because they are the ones who are on screen and get a bit more opportunity to share these experiences, but you don't necessarily hear about the office personnel or the young assistant camera trainee or the new person who's working with the AD department, that kind of stuff. And that is definitely happening still, because I've known people to tell me that in the last year.
Penny, I know you want to say something.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, you know, when I no longer work in the industry. I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm an experimental filmmaker. I work on my own. So it's not so I actually can't comment on what it's like now, but I can comment on what it was like in the 90s. I was one of the few women directors. There was a handful of us in Ottawa. And a rarity. And within, you know, and my experiences were okay. That, you know, the instances of harassment didn't happen from the crew, and the male crew was always really, really supportive. The one thing I can talk about is to pick up on Emily's point about workplace harassment. Obviously, you know, I was at Saw Video for 14 years. Clearly, within a member-based organization, you're going to it's a male-dominated, you know, it's male-dominated. The majority of members were guys, and we had women technical coordinators on the front line, and so there were many instances that I had to deal with, and we had a zero tolerance policy, but we also had to have a policy of addressing the issue, you know, having the staff complain, me addressing the issue, talking to the member, and coming to, you know, generally the result wasn't kicking them out instantly. It was, I'm going to remind you of the code of conduct. Here's the code of conduct. This is never going to happen again. Is that correct? And inevitably there'd be a written apology, and the member's behavior would change. Partly because, you know, they want the gear. So it worked, and so it had to, and if they weren't willing to do that, then it was out the door. So that happened frequently, not frequently, but on many occasions, and obviously there was some staff instances too over the years. I mean, it's just over time within a male-dominated world. One thing I will say in terms of being an experimental filmmaker, so I started off in the 90s, you know, doing drama and working in television through the 2000s and things like that. Now, as a woman experimental filmmaker, I'm one of very few in the country. It's male-dominated. The canon, what's taught in schools, what's shown in festivals, are men. So I just want to bring you back that we haven't necessarily improve things from a world that should know better. So it's still all out there.
100%. I would say, I don't know about you, Keltie, because you are a programmer as well. Like, what would you say is the intake there? Because and have you had issues too with?
Yeah, I was going to ask about because you're part of two organizations.
Jumping in.
As a programmer?
Yeah, like as a programmer and as part of the CFI and the OIF.
You mean in terms of gender parity and selections?
Yeah.
Well, we have always gone out of our way, I think, when we're down to the wire and we've got, you know, like, we're accepting 125 films and we've got our 100 to give the spots to those who are less represented usually. Like if it's down to 2 great films, we'll pick a great film by a woman over just another great film by a guy. So personally, we are conscious of that stuff.
Well, actually brings me to my next question about film festivals, because I was at TIFF recently and I was talking to this guy who runs a film festival as well, and he was saying, you know, Sundance is saying that they have to accept 35% of their films have to be made by women. So he thinks that's crippling a women's career, saying like, are you accepted only because you got to fill their quota, or are you accepted because you made a great film? So, you know, in terms of like film festivals, what do you think?
I think at least I can just speak for the Animation Festival, which is most of what I program, is that all the films, we stand by all of the films and think they're all wonderful. Like I don't think there's a I think the production parity is also growing, at least in animation. So we have the luxury, I think, of getting so many submissions that's not an issue. Like all the films we had this year.
That's really good. That's like
wonderful.
to know, right? That's really good to know about the
Yeah,
Animation Film Festival.
because and I also don't think we go out of our way to point that out either, because as if I was and have been a female filmmaker, I also would want to just have my film in something because it's great.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But he's saying that, because we're putting these quotas that we're, they might not necessarily be taking great films just because they're, made of women. They have to fill this quota. Emily has something to say.
Oh, sorry. I definitely have something to say
Yeah,
because, like, with the TIFF Share Her Journey
Yeah.
campaign, for example, I've never received so many asks for donations and all this stuff for that program. That program has so many. I've received emails
Oh, yeah, I get them all the time.
daily
Yeah.
leading up to TIFF and then for almost daily for a couple weeks after. Why do we need to donate so much money specifically for this so that they can program more women? Like, is that what the point is? Or, to feature more women? Like, why don't you just friggin' do it and then donate the money
absolutely.
or use the money that's out of your programming budget or whatever to do that instead of saying, oh, we want to reach gender parity, so you have to give us more money.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, absolutely not.
Like, frig off with that kind of crap,
Yeah.
And it like just include, oh, I'm accepting 500 films at TIFF this year and we want to have 51%. Well, why do you need to ask me, a woman, to give you more money so you can program stuff by me, a woman?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
And it doesn't cost them any more money.
Yeah, it doesn't cost anything.
Makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense. So what's the difference? Like, it's okay, so that they can bring in more people to talk at TIFF.
So is it it's a money thing now? Now it's a business thing for them. So
It
now,
is. Saying gender parity is a business decision.
That's so
It
sad.
more than likely is, and there's tons of women who are very talented filmmakers, directors, producers, writers. They just need to consciously think, oh, can we find these women? Why do we have to make this money campaign about it?
Yeah, that's my experience seeing stuff come through. There's as many good films by women as there is bad films by women, and good films by men as there is bad films by men. And it's just, there's enough quality content to do parody without pointing it out and without having to make a thing about it, I think.
So my next question, mostly I think for Emily and Angie, but working with your husbands, do you, and especially when you started the business, were people going to your husbands before going to you? Because I know, Angie, you run your agency and your husband, I think, does on the acting side, but it's your agency, right? But were people going to him directly before going to you because he was a man, and especially
No.
like 30 years ago?
No.
That's right.
You know why? Because my name was on the door.
Okay.
It was Angie's. So people would call and want to speak to just me.
Okay.
I remember the late Jeff Marshall, a casting director in Toronto. He called, and Lou answered the phone, and he said, I want to speak to Angie. And he goes, well, she's not here, but I could handle it. He goes, no, I want to speak to Angie. So I called him, and I said, Lou could have answered your question. He goes, his name's not on the door. It's your name, and you're the boss. And I said, yeah. So it helped because my name is on the business.
Okay. So if it was a generic name of,
If
just
it was
models
a
of talent, you think
generic
he would
name,
have...
yeah, most likely, but so it helps when your name's on the door.
Emily?
Well, Derek is, anyone who's worked with Derek here, he's an extremely easy person to work with, and he's very collaborative. So across the board, that's him generally. However, yes, whenever I'm introduced to people, often I'm still introduced as Derek's wife. She's Derek's wife. I've been on a set before where somebody was being a total asshole to me, and somebody said to them, oh, don't you know that's Derek's wife? Oh, sorry, I was never treated poorly again.
I just want to say that my husband said I'm Mrs. Angie.
And it's like working with him overall. There's never been a negative experience for me. It's learning about the collaborative process in general. He started in the film industry before I did. It was a natural transition for me. However, and he was my #1 supporter, and he was the one who said, you know how to write, you know how to produce stuff, you know how to do these things, let's do it. And we've been able to build a business together with our partner, Jeremy, and it's been really, really great in that aspect. But yes, people still say, like, they ask me, what is he doing? Or, like, oh, is Derek on this show? Because you're working on it or whatever. And I'm just like, no, I don't get jobs just because of him. Like, but there is that misconception. And it is kind of hard sometimes to say, like, okay, well, my experiences speak for themselves. Whenever a lot of them are intertwined with him, it's hard. But, for us building our business and stuff like that, it's been great. But yes, people, it happens, and it's frustrating.
Right.
It is frustrating. I have 2 male partners in Obscura Creative, and
it's hard to like show that you're an independent producer as well.
I'm an independent producer. I'm a
So
freelancer,
they just
and I
think that
do
you're
a lot of stuff. Like I'm working on 3 projects this year, completely separate from that, and it sucks. It sucks sometimes when people just assume, oh, Derek's directing it. No, it's not. That's not. I'm working with women. I'm working with other filmmakers and stuff like that, and it's hard. But he's very much the first person to point out, like, no, like with our TV show, people are like, makes it very clear. I'm the one who created it. I'm the one who put it together. I'm the one who did the proposals and the pitches, got the funding. He co-directed it with me, and he'll say that I co-directed it. Like, that's not.
But he has to step up and say that.
He does have to say it because they
think it's him.
They contact him and they're like, oh, how did you do this? And he's like, I don't know. Ask Emily. Yeah. So.
Keltie, you have something to say?
I don't work with my partner, but
Yeah.
I'll have
Like male
male
counterparts.
assistants sometimes.
Yeah.
And every time, without fail, I'm meeting a new contractor or something, they'll speak to him. Always. And it's pretty frustrating. I mean, that's the other thing, though. I think as a coping thing, I just have to, like, I can't, if I make a note of every single one of those kind of interactions, I go insane. Yeah. So it's just like, well, and then I kind of sometimes will step in and start using the lingo just to, like, make sure, just lead with the knowledge that I'm on the same page. You don't have to, like, explain to me what this, computer's doing for the VR setup or whatever. It's like, but yeah.
Did you get that in the offices that you've been working in at all? That they go to the
Actually,
male
it was
counterparts?
the opposite because I just hired an assistant and he's a male, and the DOP was like, "Hey, ladies," when he looked at my office. He was just kidding, though. But so no, that's never happened to me. Yeah, I'm lucky. So. And my husband works in a completely different industry,
Right.
so we're not.
But like your male counterparts in like the offices that you've ever worked in, like then people would skip you and go to them, or just
No,
were you
well,
okay,
I've worked
lucky
with
that?
mostly like women. Like when I was in
Okay.
APC,
Okay.
my coordinator was a woman, and so the two of us were always together. So it would be either talking to me or talking to Mary.
Okay.
And then same with now, like our coordinator, our first AD, like we're all
women.
ladies. And then we
great.
have Logan, my new assistant. And
It's a lady now.
he's part of the team. So yeah, luckily I've never had to have that
And
happen.
Penny, in your experience, male counterparts, like people go to them before they go to you.
Well, I was a production manager and line producer, so that didn't tend to happen
Okay.
because I was the one that people needed to. In addition to being, when I was a director, it was different, but when you're the boss,
Right.
you're the boss.
You're the boss, that's it.
Angie, I don't have a name on the door, but I'm the one who's making sure everybody shows up in the morning.
Right.
So.
So my next question would be mostly for Angie and Penny. So you've been in the industry for a very long time. When you came into the industry about like 29, 30 years ago, what were the challenges that you faced as a woman coming into this male-dominated industry? Or were you just, like a lot of people come into this industry not thinking, like they come in with rose-colored glasses and then they, like kind of a reality sets in that it's not that easy for anybody, but especially women. So what were your challenges coming into the industry a long time ago?
I didn't have any challenges, no, because it started as a hobby for me.
Okay.
So I was just having fun, and I really started off with models. So it was totally different because women ran the modeling agencies, a lot of women. So, and then we transitioned into more acting. So I didn't have any issues.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Again, I was Angie, so
You're the boss.
I'm the boss.
Benny?
Yeah, I mean, I was, as I said before, I was one of the few women directors in Ottawa in the 90s, but it was Ottawa in the 90s. So, there wasn't much opportunity anyway. So, but, I'm gonna roll it back and I think I try to sort of talk about a particular challenge that may be my story that may be more particular to women, and I'll just say, I try to look at things in addition through a gender lens, but also through a class lens. And so I came out of the working class. I didn't feel I didn't become creative as a person. I was always a stage manager. I was always an enabler. And I didn't become creative until I was 30, okay? So I was a young woman, and I didn't feel I had the permission because I didn't have a background I went to university, but just I wandered through. I didn't have any focus. And to be an artist or to be a creative person was not something that existed in my background at all. And so I think one of the challenges is self-confidence for young women, and I think my story sort of speaks to that. So I was working in theater. I was working at the Great Canadian Theatre Company throughout the mid-'80s, and when I left school. And so I was very, competent. I was a competent person and could run things and bossy, all of that. But I literally had not created anything. And I remember I was stage managing a festival of women's theater, and I had several of the directors and writers were friends of mine, and they pestered me and pestered me and pestered me to write something for this one-act play festival. And I was like, okay, well, I don't think that's my thing, but okay. So I wrote this one-act play, and I wasn't the director. Somebody else was the director, and I was the stage manager. So I remember standing in the booth of GCTC and calling the cues for my own play, which was freaky. It was freaky. It was hard to concentrate. And I watched the play happen, and I thought, whoa, that's good. Wow, what just happened there? And suddenly I realized that it was a particularly poetic piece, and that piece became my first drama 3 years later. So I made it into a screenplay and started writing grants and got grants from the Canada Council, and it became my first sort of breakout drama, I would call it. And but it was the mentorship and encouragement of other women that flipped the switch, that gave me permission. So I just wanted to share that story because I think that's a real key thing, and it's not just necessarily for me. It was about class, but it could be about race. It could be a whole host of issues that get in the way of enabling you to move forward.
Imposter syndrome, is that what it really is? Like the challenges is that you, this is what you do, but you don't do? Like people think, well, I'm not really a filmmaker. I make films, but I'm not really a filmmaker. Like, is that really?
Well, that happened for a long time,
Yeah.
and I just, I just ignored it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to say, and now it's weird because what's film? We could have a whole discussion about that.
Yeah.
So I still call myself a filmmaker
Okay.
because,
But you're a
because it's
filmmaker, right.
simpler. People understand it more rather than, media artist. What's that?
And for you guys kind of starting out in the industry in the last few years, what were your challenges?
Self-confidence, really, that comment resonated with me too, because at first I was very young, thrown into this huge job, and was just like, they're like, figure it out. So I did. And, but it wasn't until I think my confidence started to grow that I really noticed these sorts of interactions that I was having, because for a while I felt like that interaction was right. I was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm young, whatever, like these sorts of things. It just was like, that's fair.
Yeah.
But then as I started to get better at, or just feel more confident in what I was doing and picking up more things and starting to realize that I knew as much as these people that I was interacting with in some ways, then I was like, but it's still being treated in that same way I was when I started. I was like, what's that about?
Yeah.
So, and, but I also want to say that the core groups that I work with have always been very supportive. So I'm talking more like when I go out to we hire techs somewhere, these are people that I don't work with on the regular. It's just, they don't know. But it also, I've started to realize that it's gender or not, it's just like an issue of professionalism.
Right.
It's like you should be treating everybody like,
Right. Absolutely.
no matter what you think about them or what you think they look like, and none of that should really factor into it anyway. So I think another way that I've been able to deal with it is to not worry about why I'm being spoken to this way or whatever, and just write it off as like, well, these
It's not
people are
professional.
unprofessional. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Emily or Nicole?
I think one of my biggest challenges starting out was like I was pretty young, so I definitely had a bit of an attitude problem. And I got called out on it a lot because I'm very stubborn and I'm an Aries, so I'm a little combative. But I think that's something that comes with age that you know, and having like women mentoring me and older women just being like, hey, maybe you should handle it like this. Like I got really good, solid advice. To what Keltie was saying about getting like thrown into things too. Like you'll learn real quick if you just get stuff thrown at you and you just have to figure it out. But luckily I'm a quick learner, so I had a lot of situations like that where they're just like, figure it out. So I guess those are my challenges.
Emily?
This is a second career for me. So I was a public servant before, and I started filmmaking because it was just an interest, but it was also a reason to spend time with my husband, and because he was a filmmaker, and so we'd work on short films. We started through Digi60 and doing the challenges because it was community-based. We were able to grow through that. But I would say that some of the challenges have definitely been mostly people recognizing that I know how to do what I'm doing. You know, I've worked on a show before where I was upgraded to a coordinator thing, but they were like, oh, you know what you're doing. And I was like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Of course I do. Why would I want to do this job if I didn't know what I was doing? So I don't want to, like, I'm stuff like that has popped up a few times. But across the board, like, definitely the self-confidence issue, imposter syndrome, does exist for me often. I feel whenever I start a project, sometimes I think like, oh, why am I doing this? Like, what would be, why do I feel like I can do this? And maybe I can't. But it usually works out, so I'm usually happy with it. But yeah, the self-confidence is always an issue, and I definitely, sometimes I question whether or not I want to take something on. But then I remind myself, hey, you know, I've made 5 short films by myself as a director by myself. I know how to do that. I felt confident through, you know, the festivals I got into with those films, and learning about screenwriting in depth, taking script writing for a year, and then transitioning into producing after seeing that experience for me. I try my hardest to find my confidence in it, but it's always kind of lurking there, I think. Yeah.
I think one of the challenges, and I think you know, Emily and Keltie could probably speak to this as well, for a director is the assumptions around and the intimidating nature of technology, being able to, because there's assumptions with could be with DOPs or other kinds of technicians around like having a familiarity with language around a particular type of technology, and That runs the whole thing. And I've never, that's, I've that first drama I made that came out of that stage play was in the 90s was a drama. I shot it on video. And I remember being at a film festival and somebody turned to me and said, well, you can't shoot dramas on video. They have to be on film. And I just kind of looked at them like, what are you talking about? We're both here at the same festival. It's like, are you nuts? It was like, too bad. But that's an example of so there can be a little, you don't know exactly, you can't speak with such familiarity or fluidity about this particular technology, therefore you're you don't have the chops as a director. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
It's like, you do your job, I'll do my job, and we're going to figure out together how to speak, how to collaborate on this thing, because that's technology. That is not directing.
Right, absolutely.
100%, because I think, I know for our group, we are very much about collaboration. If I say, like, I want it to look like this and get to this point, how do I do it? And then they tell me, like, this is how we should probably go about it. And we have to make the decisions together in the end, if that's the direction we want to go. Like, why not just take the opportunity to learn or to teach if you have the opportunity and you don't know, right? And that's the way I try to approach it as well, because I'm not enthusiastic about technology in general, because I don't, like, I'm not a camera nerd or anything like that, but I do appreciate what a nice lens can do and, what a good operator can do. And so why not learn how they got to that point and then, but it's definitely, you can't put a limitation on how you develop your project and because it's made this way or that way with this type of camera or whatever too, right? Like, so, yeah.
So my next question's a little, maybe a little touchy. So last year we had Jules Fitzsimmons. She was a Toronto casting director, and she was a little nervous about talking about the subject about having when she started her business, women were putting her down. And you're talking about like great women mentors, but that's not always the case. Sometimes women could be your enemy. Do you think? Because women feel like they need to fight for that seat at the table because it's been such a boys' club for so long? Or do you think it's, why is there this competitive nature? And how do we fix this? And how do we, move forward and build up more women?
Well, actually, yeah, I did work with a line producer once that was very like that. Like if a younger woman was coming up to work in the production office, like she'd get very, her back up and be kind of rude. And women are really good at psychological warfare. Like we can really mess with each other's heads. Like it's been happening since we were in primary school. I'm pretty good at ignoring that kind of thing though, because I'm just like, I'm here doing my job. That's it. Like if they want to promote me or whatever, that's fine, but I'm not going to sit here and fight with you about it. So that's kind of been my experience. But that was like one time. In general, I think I've been very, very blessed to work with like really positive people. Mm-hmm.
Angie, do you see anything with like a lot of the models or they get competitive or?
Well, models are always competitive.
Okay.
But moms,
Okay. Oh.
there's some crazy moms.
Oh. Talk about the show moms.
Moms and their daughter, not their sons, but their daughters. So I had two moms in Cornwall when I first started that decided they were going to open up an agency and be my competitor.
Oh my gosh.
And they thought they could do that, so they rented this space. I just kept doing my thing and kept hearing about them, and they were really, really close to me, but they became close to me so they could find out what I was doing so they could do it. Well, they had to move out in the middle of the night. They fell flat on their face. But women are evil.
Yeah.
They're evil. They're psycho. So, yeah, but a man would have not done that. A father wouldn't have. But moms want their daughters to excel when they don't think they're going fast enough, so they will do whatever they got to do. So I did have that one experience, and I just kept doing my thing. I was hurt at first, and I called a director in Los Angeles, and I told him about it, and he said, Angie, they don't have any class. I met them, when I was at your event. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I needed to hear that.
Okay.
So That's, you just got to keep moving forward and know who you are and just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? Do you have
Well, I think across the board, there's not enough mentorship from other women in the film industry to other women. There's some that embrace it and some that don't. And I do think that there is this, I think in Ottawa, perhaps, across the board, there is this idea that somebody who is in the same department or on the same team as you could be a threat if they get the same skills as you. What if they take your job for the next show? You know, and I think that that's something that does exist. I don't think that women set out to do that. I think it's subconsciously driven into us through the patriarchy. Like, honestly, there's a lot of misogyny that exists in the film industry, especially. And there's this idea of, like, I need to be liked and I need to be the most competitive person here. So I'm not going to teach this person how to do this, so that whenever they come up and they do this job, whenever I'm gone, they won't know what they're doing, so they're going to have to come back to me to do it. I do think that could be solved through mentorship, more opportunities for people to come to talks and to workshops and to learn, which people also have to take the initiative to come out and attend. But I went through a mentorship process in Toronto through WIFT, and that really opened up to me a lot of opportunities. So, but I tried to seek that out here, and I couldn't get it on the filmmaking level. On the festival level, I think that a lot of people who run festivals here are very collaborative and want to see other festivals succeed, because it's not a personal thing for them. It's definitely more about the community, which is very important. So the arts organizations and such like that. But yeah, in the film industry, yeah, there is, I think that across the board, and I think it probably exists for men as well.
do you think men get competitive like that too?
I think they could be, yeah. Well, everybody wants the gig, right?
Right.
Like, and we live in a gig economy. Like, we work in a precarious industry where you might not have a job for 4 months.
Yeah.
You know, so, well, so and so got it over me. I trained them. I'm so upset. That can happen.
Yeah, and I think competition is like a human trait in general, for sure.
So Ottawa's industry. Let's talk about Ottawa's industry. How do we feel about working in Ottawa's industry?
Got so many Christmas movies. So many Christmas movies. Like, I worked on like 5 in 1 year. It was insane.
And I was walking on Clarence Street like last year in like the summer walking to work, and it was like snow everywhere. I'm like, not ready for this. It's summer. Can we just enjoy it?
Yeah, but I mean, they create so many jobs.
Yeah.
Like, the industry is blowing up. It's amazing. Like, we don't have enough crew to fill all the positions.
Okay.
So it's like a good problem to have, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, it's just crazy.
Because then you're going to start outsourcing to Toronto or somewhere.
Yeah,
Then
we don't want that. We
don't
want people
right.
to come work and
Yes.
film. Like, just get on it, everybody. But yeah, no, it's great. It's so great for the city, for the economy, like the amount of money that is spent here.
Do you think we'll get more than just Christmas movies?
Well, I have worked on some.
Okay,
Like, there
okay.
have been some. The bigger budget ones I find are kind of fewer and far between.
Okay.
Like, I think 2016, I worked on 2 that were like $8 to $10 million budgets. The good thing about the Christmas movies is they're lower budget, but they're consistent. Like, at Fireside, like, we've been working consistently for over a year, like, just banging them out. So that's good. The bigger budget ones are great, but it's nice to have the consistency. But yeah, there's like 3 big companies producing full time right now. Like, it's
Really, really good.
it's great. Yeah.
Angie, you've been around for a long time.
Ottawa,
so-
God, it has grown so much since we've opened here. So it's really good for actors. They don't have to travel to Montreal or Toronto. They still do, but there's just so much more work here, which they could start building up their resumes.
Right.
So it's amazing. And then once the sound studios come in, that's going to be even better.
Right.
And sometimes they do have to go look for an actor in Toronto or bring them in from Los Angeles because they don't feel that Ottawa has top actors. So that is a problem.
Right. So do you, do you disagree with that?
Yes,
like, you feel like we have a lot of great talent and they're just not looking well
If an
enough?
actor could work in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
why can't he work in Ottawa?
Yeah.
But Los Angeles booked him. And I'm
How does
talking
that-
about one kid, Sam Ash Arnold, who I predicted he was going to be the next Ryan Gosling as soon as he opened up his mouth. And he's going to be bigger than Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
Ottawa only booked him once. Smythe Casting booked him once.
Right.
But he's been working in LA and Vancouver.
Yeah.
You know, so why isn't Ottawa open to this?
Right, right.
So again, they don't realize the talent that they have. And they say you're never a star in your own hometown.
Yeah, and it's fun because when you talk to other people, they're like, you have to try to dominate your hometown before you go. But you were in your hometown doesn't want you.
That's right.
You know, trust me, I know. You know,
Yeah.
I'm Arab. You know, I don't get booked here because I'm Arab. You know, because
Yes.
I don't fit the Christmas movies.
No, you're
you know,
not a
I'm not
Hallmark
white enough. I'm not
person.
ethnic enough. I'm like an
Yeah.
ambiguous kind of ethnicity, so I don't book here. But I'll
Very
book
true.
other places. But how am I going to dominate my hometown before moving out? And it doesn't work like that for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So-
Well, I know with some of the Hallmark movies, like the higher ups, like above the line, they make casting choices based on like actors that are popular with that demographic. Like they make the casting choices for the leads. So it's kind of out of like the local producer's hands sometimes. But I agree. Like I've seen some actors on set that are just amazing on camera, and you're like, why didn't you just hire this person to be lead instead of spending like all this extra
Yes.
money on traveling this
Yeah.
person in who's like a pain in the butt? So.
Yeah. Yeah. They bring in actors from Toronto because they think they're better, and actually they're a pain in the ass for the director. Yeah.
I think that can be applied to crew as well.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, we have an issue of not enough crew in Ottawa, quote unquote. But I feel like there's a lack of comprehensive training happening here immensely, and that's on the part of both the production companies and the city at large. We don't have a strong unionized presence here, which offers training. We don't have regular workshops on training here for crew. The programs that are offered here in the schools aren't super geared towards the film industry. It's lacking in that sense. So whenever people come out of a program and they think, I can just work in the film industry, but then they never learned how to work in an art department or anything like that. They just learned how to run a control room for broadcasting.
That's what I was going to say. It's like Algonquin just opened a film production
No, it's
program.
opening next year.
Okay, so not even, but it was TV broadcasting, and that does what? For
Television broadcasting. It's a good program. It's a great program. They learn a lot of different elements, but it is
But
geared
it's not-
towards broadcasting.
not
It's not geared towards the film and
production.
TV industry. And I like the film industry in the production sense. It's more of a broadcast sense.
But everyone goes there because they feel like that's the only
the only
program
option.
that they could do to work in production.
It's really the only option in Ottawa right now. There's a film program at Carleton, which is great, I think, for people who want to work in festivals
Yeah.
or who want to work in arts administration and stuff like that. It's a really great program, and we've worked with students from there before at Digi60, and I know CFI at OIF do, and saw video as well. And because they're learning a lot about the theoretical, the history of it, media landscape, that kind of stuff. And but in those programs, they're few and far between where you're taking an actual course on creating an actual production of any sort, or if you're doing it in a very independent way where you're not actually learning on-set etiquette. You're not learning how to be a grip or how to be a gaffer or getting any licensing or doing any sort of like how to procure art department stuff or who are the gear providers in Ottawa. You're not learning that kind of stuff. So that's often learned on-the-job training here, and how can you learn it properly if your production company is not focusing on bringing up their people properly? And a lot of promises get made, and then they don't. You end up being an art PA for 10 shows, and now you're an art PA for 10 shows, and you've never learned how to be a production designer. You've never learned how to be a proper art director or anything like that. You're putting the props out, and some people, that's what they'll do for the rest of their life, and that's totally fine. But for people who want to actually train and learn up how to run departments and all that kind of stuff, there is nothing here for that. That doesn't exist.
So two things. The CFI, we've been talking and developing an idea for another festival or just like a series of workshops speaking exactly to what you're saying, because we've heard from many people and want to sort of find, and I think we're still talking, so we should chat about exactly what the needs are, like to complement and supplement IFCO and Saw Video, and if people need to know more of that sort of level of stuff. So we want to, sort of like Animation Festival with the professional development stuff there, is to bring in folks who might be able to fill in the blanks and build up that knowledge base here and then take off and leave the knowledge behind, kind of thing.
I think that there's an opportunity with the new, I hope that there's an opportunity with the new film program at Algonquin, but because Algonquin, the animation
So good. That
course
program.
program there, really, you could see the direct link between animation and the industry here. So that works really well. Over the years, the capacity within Ottawa has been really is not what it should be. You can't rely on the artist-run centers to do everything. They do a lot. Saw Video does a lot already, but they can't fill that gap. That's the film office. Back in the day, it used to be OFTA. Remember OFTA, Ottawa Film and Television Association, and then it died. And then now there's the film office. Well, the film office has got its hands full, clearly, with a new studio. But there isn't that professional development part is totally missing. And if you look at something like, I think of an organization like On Screen Manitoba, which obviously that's provincial, but it does a wonderful job delivering training, on-set training and protocol, things like that within Winnipeg. And it's a really good model for the for professional development opportunities. Clearly, it obviously it doesn't go out much beyond Winnipeg because of the nature of Manitoba. So it really fills that need within the province. And we, besides CMPA and WIFT, there really isn't. There really is a lack of professional development opportunities in the country, let alone Ottawa. So that's a real key thing that I think falls to the film office to do.
We're involved. Ozern is putting that stuff together, and I think the film board or the film office is interested, and the soundstage, of course, was sort of the impetus for the discussion. It's like, we're going to have this professional facility, so then we'll bring in professional knowledge to help if people need it.
Well, I know Digi60 would definitely like to be a part of that because our mandate is professional development for Ottawa filmmakers. And you definitely there's a split between people who do it as a hobby and for fun, and we 100% support that. But there's also half of our filmmakers who are trying to create careers here in Ottawa in this industry, and it's very challenging whenever they don't have workshops or training opportunities or any mentorship opportunities here. And there's been several occasions that we've tried to set up mentorships and stuff like that, and it just hasn't worked out. Because of a lack of commitment from other companies or people who say they want to do it but then they don't. So definitely those kind of things are needed here 100%. And I can say as someone I applied for and received mentorship from both the CMPA and WIFT, and I can tell you how immensely positive it has been for my career. And it's extremely important, but there's nothing here for that, and there's very few people who can access that here. And so I was lucky because I had a producer that I was able to co-apply with for CMPA, and he was extremely supportive of me, and I got to work for him for 2 years because of that 6-month contract that I got through the CMPA Ontario production mentorship. And then I had to take it on myself to go and do the WIFT Connect mentorship in Toronto with an executive there because I needed to figure out a direction for myself, and I couldn't get it here. So unfortunately, because I just didn't see an opportunity for mentorship. And it's just so extremely important that we provide those opportunities for people who are coming up in this industry in Ottawa, because I think that we 100% need people to think, I can create a career here and I can live here and be a filmmaker here or work in this industry here full time. And I don't have to worry about going to Toronto for months on end or moving there 100%, because people build their lives here, and why should they have to leave whenever we have so many productions happening in town? Production companies, just to kind of touch on it, production companies need to pay their employees better too. Like, honestly, the rates here are quite low compared to other places. And so if people have an option to go and do a show in Toronto for $200, $300 more a day, why wouldn't they go and do that? Right? It's hard. And having these low budget films come in are so great because people are getting work, and they're getting to do tons of films throughout the year, but the producers on top need to think we need to invest more in the people there so that we are spending less money bringing people in from Toronto or LA or wherever the hell. Because we have talented people here, and you can train people up to do what you need them to do. You don't need to spend that extra money on housing and all this other crap for someone to come in for 2 months and work on your film whenever you can get the people right here. This industry is growing. Take advantage of the people here, and let's friggin' hire them. Like, honestly,
Exactly.
across the board.
Agreed.
Just before we move on from
yeah.
working in Ottawa, aside from the industry, which I don't have a ton of experience in, but my work here has been in projection and presentation, and so working with venues like Arts Court, with Ted over there, and the Bytown, and Alma Duncan down the hall. And I just wanted to say before we move on that I don't think I could have, if any other city, I'm not sure if I could have gotten to where I'm at now without people just treating me, like I said, like as a professional. It's like, and also being very generous with their knowledge, because you can't really go train somewhere about projecting necessarily. Like, you just have to be generous. And any questions I had, I was given without any kind of fear of competition. Just very, very, the people here have been so generous with everything. So before we move on, I just
saw a
wanted
video
to...
and we worked at the Loop space last night,
Yeah.
because the Loop is now more for, they try to have programs for women and workshops for women, and they're trying to build them up, and so they're a really great resource to have, and they've been really, really great in supporting this festival and Digi60, and they're super great.
But people need to
Community here.
show up. People need to
Yeah.
show up to those events,
I
though,
know.
too, because
Absolutely.
whenever resources like Saw Video or Digi60 or anything are putting in the time and the effort and their
Yeah.
funding into creating these
Yeah.
spaces, people need to go to those workshops
Yeah.
and take advantage of them,
Yeah.
because how are you going to get the training unless you go?
Right.
And there's so often, one of the number one things that I'm asked at Digi60 is, how do I get funding for my film? Well, why don't you go to a grant workshop with Saw Video or
Yeah.
with Penny,
Mhm.
because she's the grant queen. But that's the number one thing
Yeah.
I say. Why don't you go take a grant workshop?
Yeah.
Ottawa Arts Council offers
Yeah.
grant workshop. Why don't you go network and meet people? Go to this
Right.
workshop. Oh, I want to learn how to produce. Well, go to our production management workshop. All that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
How do I create a pitch package? Oh, can I just send someone an idea? No, you have to do this.
Right.
And but it's hard. I understand there's an issue with money.
Yeah.
But artist-run centers like Saw Video, Digi60, IFCO, all these things, they offer things at as an affordable price as possible.
Right.
And they bring people in to teach them. And if you're bringing in for us, I know for us, we bring in people who've been connected to Digi60 or connected to Ottawa always, and they are always very generous with their time to come in and teach workshops or do panels and stuff like that. But you can see, I can actually make a feature film, or I can get funding, or let me learn how. But
A lot of them have ideas, but they don't want to put the work in.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work, and I think anyone on this panel will say that it is to run a business, or to write a show, to get it produced, to make a film, to promote your employees and your actors and all that kind of stuff. It's so much work, and it is.
Yeah.
it is what it is. If you
Ottawa needs to show up.
show up.
People don't think things like this exist in Ottawa.
And we're trying to change that with Emily, and Digi60, they're sponsoring our speed mentoring lunch, and we're trying to really build women in our industry here in Ottawa. We really want them to get mentored. We want them to learn. We want them to feel confident that they can, do these things and be part of our community. We want to have that support within each other and not compete and be able to go to each other and.
And we need more women filmmakers to take that leap as well.
Yeah.
Like in the spring at Digi60, 60% of our filmmakers were women. And then all of our award winners were women. And that was the first time that ever happened. And we were extremely excited about it. This year, for the Fall Festival, we are at 45%, I think, are women that signed up, which is amazing. But, because of partnerships that, we started with Penny at SAW and we're continuing today for like our Female Filmmakers Award, which offers opportunities for women filmmakers to, get some workshops and some equipment access and all that kind of stuff. And Maissa, you're
I
a
won
winner.
that last year.
You won it,
I did.
and you were able to use that opportunity to make your first big project yourself, and that's what I think we're trying to do to facilitate. But people do need to take that leap and attend, just like Angie was saying. Like they need to attend and learn about it, or what is the film festival? Well, come and check it out.
Yeah,
like it's
absolutely.
definitely stuff that things are happening here, and people do need. I've said it 100 times today, but you need to show up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you so much for being here and volunteering your time to do this. I know it's a Saturday morning, so thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your experiences. Can we get a round of applause for these lovely ladies? Thank you.